Fear stops us from achieving our true greatness. Are you a professional woman who is feeling stuck, unmotivated, or burned out? Are you worried about your wellness? Are you letting fear stop you from crushing your goals? If you answered yes to any or all of these, then this is the podcast for you. Dr. Charmaine Gregory, night shift emergency physician, burnout thriver, and wellness champion, along with everyday heroes just like you, will explore how to face fear in our lives and emerge victoriously.
Welcome.
Thank you.
I am so happy to have Melissa Duncan on the show today, guys. Oh my God. Fearless Freedom Tribe, you don't know. This lady is absolutely amazing. Not only is she a mom to some amazing cherubs, but she is also a lawyer.
That's right.
And she has her own podcast.
Yes, ma'am.
So we are at an amazing place, I just have to say. We are in Atlanta, Georgia, and we're at the ShePodcastsLive conference. We're in a sound booth, and we are recording this episode.
It's here.
It's super cool. So, Melissa, I would love for us to get into some items within your life that you're overcoming fear or you're having fear around.
Absolutely. And I was joking with you beforehand, Charmaine, that I am typically just kind of an anxious person generally, and that I could think of a lot of things that over the course of my life have where fear has shown up and I've had to really push past it. So I can think of two examples that come to mind immediately. And one of them I have worked through, and I feel like I'm kind of on the other side of it, and the other I haven't. So I think I have kind of two different perspectives there, like still working through the second one. So do you want me to just jump right in?
Oh, yeah, please do.
So the
Absolutely.
First
now
one,
I'm intrigued.
So the first one is very similar to your fear of public speaking. So when I first realized that I had this fear when I was in college and had to give a senior presentation at the end of college, and I didn't want my fiance at the time to even come in the room where I was giving this presentation. He wanted to come in and support me, and I wouldn't let him because I was so completely terrified.
Okay.
And my fear specifically was I am afraid I'm either going to throw up or pass out. Now, there's no, that doesn't make any sense. How often does someone actually do either of those things on a stage? But that's what I was afraid of. So
Gotcha.
I went to law school, continued with this fear, had to take classes where I had to speak in front of North Carolina Supreme Court justices, very prestigious judges and members of the legal community. And I really had to work to build myself up for those times where I had to speak in front of people. And so finally I graduated from law school, and I thought I had chosen a career path that would not require me to have to be in court very often. Because I was so scared of public speaking. But as you might imagine the way this story goes, guess what? My very first case I filed, guess where I had to go? I had to go to court.
Oh my goodness.
So I was a bankruptcy lawyer. In my very first case, I had a hearing set, and I thought, you have got to be kidding me. I chose bankruptcy law so that I would not have to do this. And here I am, my very first case. So to make a long story short, I showed up, burst into tears afterwards, shook through the whole thing. I was just completely terrified. But that worst opportunity, that kind of worst moment made me realize that, okay, the things I'm actually really scared of are probably not going to happen. So I need to figure out how to work through this. And spoiler alert, now I love public speaking. And actually to record this interview, I walked out of the session called Land a Speaking Gig because I'm now really interested in doing more public speaking. So now I teach classes at my, I work at a law school, so I teach classes at the law school. I give presentations to, groups of attorneys, members of the community. I am serving on a panel at UNC Chapel Hill later this month.
Oh, awesome.
I have a podcast, so I really feel like I was able to kind of push through it, but it took years for me to be able to do that.
Oh, my God. Wow.
So that's the one that I've resolved.
That's a huge victory, though.
Yeah.
I mean, to go from, your whole body shaking and that crippling experience, as you're in court,
Yep.
to now you're the teacher, you're getting in front of the audiences, you're like making a difference. That's pretty awesome.
Yeah. Yeah. So that would be the one that I've really been able to work through and, have been able to get on the other side of. So you want to hear about the one that?
Oh, I absolutely do. I do.
And so I think the funny thing about this, sharing this with you, is that as a medical professional, I think you will find this to be particularly interesting and relevant. So when I was pregnant with my oldest kid, ended up having high blood pressure, and just during pregnancy. But that kind of sent me into this like mental state of anxiety around my own health. I had always been very healthy, and I was really paranoid from then on out. So now whenever I go to the doctor, the first time they take it, my blood pressure's high, just because I'm nervous that
white
my
coat
blood
syndrome.
Yeah, just because I'm nervous that my blood pressure is going to be high.
Right,
And so
exactly.
then they tell me, calm down, take some deep breaths, and then it's fine.
Yeah.
But that has now kind of spilled over into some other things based on some other health scares, or things that my family's had to work through. My youngest son has asthma, and he had RSV as a little baby, and it got pretty serious. And so I experience a lot of fear around, anytime he gets sick, I kind of go into like panic mode, probably sooner than I should. I had a ruptured ectopic pregnancy last year that was very unexpected, and so that has me terrified now of, any future pregnancies, what that might look like. I had Lyme disease this summer, so I feel like I've all of a sudden, kind of developed, just because of things that have happened, developed some fears around kind of the what ifs. Like I tend now to kind of jump to like a worst case scenario mindset, which is not my normal kind of state of being. Like I'm a really positive person, pretty.
Right.
I'm an Enneagram 7, so everything is
my
pretty.
goodness, Enneagrams.
Yeah. So if anybody knows what that is, but pretty positive, like pretty laid back. But when it comes to health stuff, given. And it feels like the thing that kind of set it off was my first pregnancy. And then from then on, it's like, I have really kind of developed some anxiety around it. Now, the good news is I am really trying to work on that, aspect of it. But that is the part that I would say is definitely still a work in progress for me. And I can't say that I'm on the other side of that fear. If in the same way that I am on the other side of the public speaking fear. So as a doctor, if you have any suggestions on how I can...
Well, what I was going to say was, wow, kudos to you for everything that you have gone through, because every last one of those items that you mentioned is very traumatic, right?
Yeah.
I mean, you had a condition where you could have died.
Yes.
And you survived that.
Yes.
You had a child who was in a situation where he could have died.
Yes.
And survived.
Yep.
So it's almost as though every time that you're thrown into this kind of arena, that is like you have to draw on the positive side of that.
Yes. Yeah, the doctor we have a women's hospital in my city, and the doctor on call said if you had waited 2 hours, this would have been a completely different situation.
Absolutely.
And so for me, hearing that now, I think that's where my fear comes from. It's like, well, we can't wait 2 hours because, same thing with my son. And so thank you for recognizing that those things were traumatic, but that has really kind of unexpectedly put this fear in me around things that I 5 years ago would not have been, fearful of. So I know I just went really deep, really fast.
No. That is perfect. And I really appreciate you sharing that. Thank you for sharing that, because that's not something that we are wanting to dig deep into and really come to grips with the feelings around that. And to be honest with you, the fact that you are recognizing it and the crux of it is gonna speak volumes, because what's gonna happen is you're each and every time that you're in a situation, you're gonna recognize, hey, maybe I'm overreacting, but I'm still going to make sure I check this out, which is a great way to go about it.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And it helps, I think I'm grateful that my husband is like pretty level-headed and I have really been able to kind of talk myself through like, are those, like when my first instinct is to kind of jump to like a big state of fear, a fever sends me into like, oh my gosh, it's like, no, wait a minute. Is this a logical thought or a rational thought that, right. Like, do we need to get to point, Z, or are we more at like B right now? And so I've really learned to kind of work on that. But I have a lot of empathy now for people who have been through really, really, not that this wasn't really traumatic for me, but, even more traumatic things in their lives that I sometimes hear stories about, and people having really serious post-traumatic stress disorder. And I just, given what I know, I went through, which is not, right. Relatively speaking, not necessarily that serious, but...
no, it was. Let's not downplay it now.
Yeah.
It really was.
Thank you. But, I have a lot of empathy for people now. And I guess that's a positive in this, that as a generally positive person, I tend, when people are kind of having those moments where they're freaking out about something that I wouldn't freak out about, to kind of be like, what? Like, what's the big deal? What's the problem? And so I think I have now kind of realized, like, everybody has, something that kind of sends them into that state of fear or anxiety. And, maybe they can manage it well, but that doesn't mean that they might feel it and then be able to manage it.
Right.
But I feel like I now don't downplay it the same way. So I guess that's a positive that has come out of it.
That's a huge growth point. Mm-hmm. That is very, very huge. Because as you're saying this, it just really reinforces in my mind also when I go into, and I may be, because I work at night, so maybe I might see a patient who brings their child in for a sore throat, but I don't know that the backstory is that they had a family member who had a sore throat, and the next thing you know, they were in the ICU, or they, God forbid, died. And I don't know that backstory.
Right.
So I have to always clear my mind and enter the situation and say, you know what is it that concerns you the most today? Yeah. And if it's something that I feel like is not, as grave, I will say, is there a reason why this is a concern to you? I think that follow-up question makes all the difference.
Yep.
So
yeah, that's helpful, because I think trying to see through the lens of the person who is kind of experiencing that fear is really helpful to the person. That it's not like you're just saying like, oh, this is just a sore throat.
Right.
It's not, because to them they might
dismissive.
Have something else in their experience. So
absolutely. Yeah. Wow, thank you so much, Melissa, for
You're
sharing.
Welcome.
Oh
You're
my
welcome.
God.
Thank you for asking me to share.
I feel so special that you because literally, guys, I literally said, hey, Melissa, you're at the conference? And she's like, yeah, I'm here. Like, when am I going to see you? And I'm like, all right, well, I have a spot to record.
In 30 minutes.
So are you going to come down and do it? And you're like, yes. So I really appreciate that.
Thank you for having me. And thanks for letting me, I know I went kind of deep with it fast.
No. I think that was perfect.
I apprieate it.
That was perfect.
Thank you for the support.
Oh my gosh, this has been so much fun.
This really is fun.
It's very different. I don't know if you guys know, most of us as podcasters, we are recording in our closets, in a minivan, in the office, wherever we can find space away from the kids. Yep. And, it's very different to be in a actual studio. So yeah,
it's fun to be able to look at each other.
And now it's like, I'm actually touching her, which is very different from usual. So normally we are doing virtually the recording. So in the vein of our show, we always at the very end of the show, we'll do the fill in the blanks. So are you ready?
I'm ready.
Okay, awesome. All right, so the first fill in the blank is, if I am fearless, I will.
If I am fearless, I will win over the voice in my head that tells me that I can't do something, or that something bad is going to happen. So I can easily let that voice talk me out of things that I would otherwise enjoy or do. And so when I'm fearless, I do those things anyway.
Oh, love that. That is like a gem, you guys.
Yes.
Oh my gosh. And to me, fearless freedom means?
To me, fearless freedom means leaning into the things that I'm passionate about and excited about, even though I could come up with a million reasons why it will be hard or scary, or, people might say something, all of the reasons why I think even I hesitated in creating a podcast, right? And so I think fearless freedom is basically saying I get to do the things that I'm really excited and passionate about, even if there's a little bit of fear underneath it. I'm not going to let that win, and I'm going to do it anyway.
Awesome. Oh my gosh. It's like girl power over here.
Yes.
And then last but not least, my battle cry is?
My battle cry is I can do hard things.
Sweet.
I can do hard things.
Awesome.
Because that's what I would want my kids to tell themselves.
That's right.
So,
That's right.
Yeah. And I actually tell them that sometimes. I'm like, you could, this is hard. I say, you can do hard things. And so I try to tell myself that too.
That's so simple, but very impactful.
Yeah.
It's like, there's so many lessons in that.
Right. Yes, you can do hard things.
It's like, oh, wait, maybe I can. That's great.
Right. Exactly.
Love it.
Exactly.
Oh my gosh. Thank you so much again for being on the show.
Thank you.
And shout out from She Podcast Live in Atlanta from Dr. G and Melissa Duncan. Take care. Thank you for joining us today on this journey. Fear is all around us. It strives to stop us from achieving our greatness. We have the tools to be overcomers. By sharing our stories, supporting each other, and doing self-reflection, we can do this. If you found value in this conversation today, please be sure to subscribe to and share this podcast with your friends. By going to your favorite podcast platform, leaving a review and a 5-star rating, you will help to get the word out about it. And that is much appreciated. Thanks again for spending time with us. I appreciate your time and your attention. It is my hope that you will punch fear in the face today and that you will be strong, be brave, and unleash your greatness.